So we continue now with our discussion about Reb Moshe Feinstein, who was considered um, the almost by everybody who counts the Gadol Hador, the great man of the uh, generation. Um, he had the entire, what we would call the entirety of Torah. I don't mean the five books of Moses, but the Babylonian Talmud, the Yerushalmi Talmud, all the he had it on his everything, all the Rishonim, the earlier commentators, the halachic authorities on his fingertips, and he reviewed them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And I think I mentioned last week that in one class that he was giving, he quoted a source, and one person questioned it. He said, "No, that's not the source; it's somewhere else." And Reb Moshe said, "So bring out a Gemara. Let's check it out." So no, it's in the middle of the shir. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to make sure for the purpose of getting it, right, that he had the right source. And Reb Moshe insisted that they take the book out of the shelf. And when they asked him why, he said because for the last many years, when he gives his decisions in halacha, and people ask him, and even oftentimes when he writes totally out of memory. And everything that he quotes verbatim is totally out of memory. And if his memory isn't 100% accurate, then he can't do that anymore. And of course, they pulled out the book, and of course, he was right. He was look, he was a human being. He had flaws, but he made mistakes, as every human being does. Not the same mistakes we make, but his knowledge of Torah was impeccable. It's also a very interesting thing. There were other great authorities at the time who dealt with who also gave out halachic decisions, and of course, Reb Moshe never took personal umbrage to it. I mean, people are allowed to disagree with him. Usually, the majority followed what Reb Moshe said, but in certain things, he was very, very lenient. Now, I'm going to just use an example. I don't want to compare them to Reb Moshe, but in the 1950s, when the conservative movement saw that so many Jews were falling by the wayside, they moved into the suburbs and there weren't shuls there. So instead of building shuls in the suburbs, what did they do?
You can drive.
They gave a permit to drive on Shabbos, right? And they said that's going to save Judaism. Boy, did they prove to be wrong. Okay. However, what they did was they took something that was a clear, absolute violation of halacha, and what they did was they said we're going to permit it because we think it's necessary to save Jews. Their intent may have been very, very good, but the road to some very not good places is paved with good intentions. Right? That's what they say. So Reb Moshe also, again, we belovedly, the Jewish people called him Reb Moshe, the great Rabbi Feinstein. That's how we call him. He oftentimes found leniencies in halacha, and he used them. And he said that even when people would say, "How could you do that? We don't do that." He said, "American Jewry is falling apart, and we have to find things that halachically are acceptable, even if we don't usually do them, because if they'll do things halachic now, as time goes on, and they have children and grandchildren, they'll go back to doing things the way it's ideal to do it. You cannot say something that's anti-halacha and expect that that's going to help the Jewish people. It doesn't work." Reb Moshe's approach was quite different. Reb Moshe's approach was, no, we have to use our abilities to find for certain people that which is lenient, which is within the halachic framework, and then let things play out. And he turned out to be right. The most famous one that I can think of is the height of a mechitza, right? Which very, very, very few people go with 5 feet. Reb Moshe said that that's the minimum, absolute minimum that you can have for a mechitza in a shul. And there are shuls that did, and there are shuls that used to, and even some do now that use that because the way, hopefully, that they're not doing it just because, oh, well, we got to fulfill our obligation. That's good enough. So I want to go to a story of the Sanzer Rebbe that I may have shared once before. It's a beautiful, beautiful story that I heard last year. He was a great Hasidic Rebbe. He passed away in the 1960s or 70s, and he once was in a matzah baking factory before Pesach, and there was a yid, and when he was leaving, he saw a Jew in the corner who had been working, but his clothes were tattered. He didn't, look. So he went over and he took a nice wad of bills out of his pocket and he gave it to him. Not salary. He wasn't responsible for paying the people in the matzah bakery. He just, he gave him money that he should have for Yontif. And a few days later, the Chofetz Rebbe came with the same man who came with him to the matzah bakery. He came again, and as he's leaving, he sees the same man, and he pulls again money out of his pocket, and he gives it to him. So the man who was with the Rebbe says, Rebbe, you already gave him the Shanyertz given. I mean, you already fulfilled your obligation, as if to say, what do you have to do it again? So the Chofetz Rebbe said something. It doesn't translate so well into English. Ich bin nicht gekommen zu die Welt, Yoitzu zu sein. I didn't come to this world just to get by what I can. The man needs money. I did my obligation. Okay, so besides that, there's a mitzvah to give more than once when it comes to tzedakah. But you say, I've fulfilled my obligation. Therefore, what? He doesn't need my money anymore. I didn't come to this world just to, do minimal that I have to do. That idea is a very important idea, I think, in general, in our lives as well. If we're serious about our relationship with Hashem, there's certain things that we may say, all right, I'm going to at least do this because I want to do what's right. I'm not going to do more. But then at least you're keeping the door open to growth, right? But and if you're serious about it, if you're serious about a relationship with another human being, you don't do, if you have somebody who works with you who you don't want to have a relationship with, but you want to be a mensch to, so you might do the minimum that you're required to do to be nice to a person. But if you're in a marriage relationship or a good friendship, you don't say, that's the minimum I have to do. Right? You do that, you're not going to have very many friends. Right? So that's what the Chofetz Rebbe said. I didn't come here just to do the bare basic, the bare bones, I do it after. So Reb Moshe utilized his incredible wisdom and his incredible knowledge of Torah to be able, for certain things, to find leniencies that other people couldn't. And he was so humble in the way he did it. If people would disagree with him, he would disagree with him. I want to read to you something here's the book that last week it was hard to see because you're on the computer, don't see the shelf. This is one of many volumes of questions and answers that Reb Moshe himself wrote by hand. I mean, and apparently in the early days he made carbon copies of everything, and there's hundreds of each book. There's small print, and in the entire compendium, I think there's 9 books now, thousands and thousands of questions that he answers, and some of them are one paragraph, and some of them are 6 pages long, right? Where he cites many sources, and he answers question on every issue imaginable, from medicine to tefillin to mikvah to embarrassing other people to abortions. I mean, all over the place, because he was the address, and especially like later on in the time when Reb Yashiv, who passed away many years after Reb Moshe, Reb Yashiv passed away in 2012, Reb Moshe passed away in 1986. Those types of questions then went over to Reb Yashiv in Yerushalayim. He was known as the one. But I wanted to show you how he didn't take umbrage. He was very, very humble, and he didn't get agitated. Like he wouldn't show agitation to people. And when somebody once commented to him, he said, like the story I told last week, where Reb Moshe Feinstein said, people may not be able to follow my husband and expect to know Torah like my husband, but from his midos, from his character and the way he behaves, that they can learn. So Reb Moshe said he wasn't always like that. He said by nature, Reb Moshe said that there were certain times he wasn't so mild-tempered, right? And in provocative situations, he never responded angrily, never. But he said that wasn't always like that. He worked on it. You shouldn't think that this is something that was inborn. And if he told that to somebody, and I don't know under what circumstances he told that, but if he told it to somebody, he didn't tell them to show off. He was telling them, you can work on it too. I saw a very beautiful story with him, that he was once at a Mo'etzes Gedolei HaTorah meeting, a meeting of the great Torah sages of America. There's a group from Agudas Yisrael. I think there are 14 rabbis on it today. And in the days of Reb Moshe Feinstein, I don't know how many there were, but we know who they were. They were the greatest Torah leaders in the United States. And he once had one of his closest friends was Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. I may have told you that Rosh Hashiva today in Yeshiva Torah Chaim, his name is Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. He's a great grandson of his. And he had a very strong disagreement on an issue in educating children. And policy, it wasn't sorry, it was not the Moetzes Gedolei Torah of Agudas Yisrael. It was Torah Masorah, the National Board for Orthodox Day Schools in the United States. Torah Masorah, they were both on the board of that. And he had a very strong disagreement with Yaakov on how to approach a certain issue in education. And they started to really, get at it with each other, each one saying their side very strongly. And Reb Moshe felt that he felt that he was getting agitated. So he walked out of the room and he just kept pacing back and forth in the hallway until he felt himself cool down because he didn't want to yell at Yaakov, he didn't want to get angry at him. He came back in and they looked at him, and whoever it was, who maybe was the chair of the board, I don't know, said, we had the discussion, we agree with Reb Yaakov, we're going to follow Reb Yaakov. And Reb Moshe walked over and with a big smile, he said, oh, and he gave him a big hug. Like, okay, that's it. That's what they decided. That's what they decided. Let's move on to the next issue on the table. You understand the greatness of that story? Boy, if people could learn that today. People disagree with each other. How many times have I spoken about this? In families, people don't talk to each other because they disagree in politics. They can't invite them to their house because they disagree. There's two things behind this. First of all, you don't get into fights with people because you disagree with them. That's number one. Unless, well, I don't even want to go to the unlesses. It'll open up too many doors. But there's another point in here, and that is that there's a specific issue. It happens to be that the conservatives and the left in this country, I don't know if they're, I don't know how to define the left. I'm just going to call it more the left. Have very, very strong disagreement on, and I was on the conservative side. A few years ago, I had somebody sitting in my office, and he heard what I said, and he presented the side that he believed in. And he didn't convince me, but I'm sitting there. This was like a watershed moment in my life, I think. He didn't convince me, but I said, oh, he's coming from somewhere too. I mean, I might not see things the way he does, but he's not coming out of nowhere. Whether it's his background, whether it's his upbringing, maybe it's a teacher that he had, maybe it's an experience that he had, he's not coming from nowhere. So what am I going to go call him a Meshugana, tell him you're crazy, get out? And I wouldn't chase him out of my office anyway. I told you last week the one time where I threatened to throw somebody out of my house.
And I came back.
No. I don't know if you heard that. He's sitting here, David said, and I came back. That's right. And it was very, very important. Like I've known for a long time that okay, you disagree. You don't have to dislike somebody. But the thing that it's not always like that. Some people just think so because. But many people, it's a thought out process. They think differently than you. They don't learn the same way as you. They didn't see things, and you got to respect that, even if you don't agree with the position, right? So that was a very, very important thing. So here, Reb Moshe went over to him and he said, okay, Baruch Hashem, they decided, now let's move on to the next issue. He didn't hold it against him. He didn't get upset. All right, you disagree with me? You have a right to. So I want to read something to you that Reb Moshe wrote here. It's in Yerideh, which is, if I read to you just the table of contents, it would take up a good part of the class and would be very interesting just to read you the table of contents and what's in this particular book. But over here, Reb Moshe said that if you have an observant woman who knows what she's doing and she's taught the laws of being a mashgiach in the kitchen, you can have a woman being mashgiach in the kitchen. Reb Moshe has a whole thing on that. In other words, it's not like a woman rabbi. It's not like being appointed a president of a shul, which could be a problem. Whatever. He has a whole thing of it. There was a rabbi who took umbrage to it, who he was upset with it, and he felt Reb Moshe was wrong. Now, you can't ask me the reasons. Reb Moshe writes a whole 1, 2, 3. I mean, he has a whole thing over here to prove his point, right? But what happened was the person who wrote the letter knew who he was arguing with, right? So he apologized. Like, he starts off the letter with respect, like, I'm sorry, I really apologize for disagreeing with you, but I strongly disagree with you. So listen to how Reb Moshe starts off the letter. First of all, he writes, I don't know if he knew him personally or not. I don't know, but he starts off the letter, my friend, the rabbi, the sage, Rabbi so-and-so, the editor of such and such magazine. All right, he gave him, okay. The fact that he called him Harav Hagon, the rabbi, the sage, I've gotten that too. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, maybe when Moshe wrote it, it meant more, but certainly in 2026, anybody sitting around this table can get the title. Right, almost right.
We'll start using it tomorrow.
Okay, so listen how he starts with the letter. This before he gets to the issue. He doesn't talk about the issue first. He says, this which your honor apologizes that he thinks not like me. So you're apologizing for not agreeing with me, right? He says, I don't know why you have to apologize. He says it's clear that everyone has to clarify and verify the truth according to his opinion. And we're talking about somebody who didn't just make up an answer, somebody who thought it through, who himself was a scholar. He wasn't a scholarly close to Reb Moshe, but he thought that he had good sources. And in the response, Reb Moshe quotes shows how he misread the sources and misunderstood the sources, and that's Reb Moshe's responsibility. He wasn't putting him down. He just, they're coming to a disagreement in halacha. And he says, and it doesn't matter whether it's to be more strict or whether to be more stringent. You have to do what you find is correct in halacha. And even if it's a student who disagrees with his rabbi, and certainly not with his rabbi, with his Rebbe in Torah, more than the rabbi, not the one synagogue rabbi, more than his Rebbe in Torah, and certainly to others who you're not a student, you're not a student of mine, you absolutely have an obligation to disagree with me. If that's how you feel, if you've gone through it, you have an obligation to agree with me. And he says, see in the different responses that I write, where I wrote a little bit at length about this. And then he said, Im kavanoso, and if your intention to apologize is because maybe you said some unkind words about me when you were writing. So there's not just that you disagreed with Reb Moshe, who was the top of the top, but also maybe you felt you write some not kind words. Hina yodua l'chol hamakirim osi. It's known to all who know me. Shabaruch Hashem, that thank God, ani rochok mikpeda chas v'shalom. I'm very distant from getting upset with people. Al shum adam, anybody. I don't get upset with people. V'kol shken al talmud chacham, and certainly for a Torah scholar, I wouldn't get upset with him. Reb Moshe himself writes, he said that from the time he can remember, he didn't get upset with anybody who embarrassed him, who insulted. It's like it was water off a duck's back. He didn't. He worked on himself that he shouldn't get upset. He writes this himself. This is not somewhere where somebody Reb Moshe told him. Yeah, Reb Moshe writes this himself, and I think it's a very incredible thing to see, and it's something to work on. And since it's very difficult for most of us to be like that, so I'd like to maybe make a suggestion. I know there's the count to 10 and put on Jack. There's a lot of different things, right? But what Reb Moshe did when he felt himself getting agitated, that story that I told Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, he went into the hallway and walked back and forth. And when he felt, calm down, he walked back in. And then when he found out that everybody disagreed, or not that everybody disagreed, but that they came to a solution, not like Reb Moshe said, okay, so let's move on. He gave Rabbi Yaakov a hug and they moved on. Yeah. Rabbi Beryl Wein married somebody by the name of Levine. Rabbi Beryl Wein's father-in-law, Olav Shalom, was a rabbi in Lithuania, in Poland. Sorry, he was born there, and he came to America, and he was a rabbi in Detroit for half a century. He, as a young boy, he lost his parents, and they sent him to the house of the Chofetz Chaim. Now, this wasn't uncommon. They sometimes dropped off little children at the house of the Chofetz Chaim for him to raise. We're talking about a totally different era, totally different people didn't have. And so his father-in-law, Rabbi Wein's father-in-law, was raised in the house of the Chofetz Chaim. And he said that people think that the Chofetz Chaim, like he was so great, he didn't have a temper. He didn't get angry. He said, my father-in-law was in the house, and he said, that's incorrect. The Chofetz Chaim, sometimes during discussions, would get upset. And especially the Gemara says that Kohanim, a Kohen, has an irritable disposition. They get angry more quickly. That's what the Gemara says about Kohen. So he said the Chofetz Chaim was a Kohen. And he said, but what I did see is that when he would get irritated or agitated, he would get up, he would go either into the corner or into another room, and he would start talking to himself. And he would say to himself, Yisrael Meir, that was his name, Yisrael Meir, Werd nit in Kas. Don't get angry. Yisrael Meah, Vert Nitin Kas. He would talk to himself, telling himself not to lose and not to get angry. And when he had talked to himself enough that he calmed down, then he'd come back to the table. Right? So this is a discussion that we've had with Rabbi Abraham J. Twersky, where there's disagreements on exactly. He says it's okay for a person to feel angry because he thinks it's almost humanly impossible not to. But there's a difference between feeling angry and getting angry, meaning displaying your anger. Those are two different things. So we see at the Chofetz Chaim, I can't say he felt angry, but he certainly felt himself getting irritated, and he talked himself out of it. He would tell himself, "Yisrael Meir, don't get angry." But if you have your own method that works, that's good too. Because for me, the secret is knowing what's going to happen 5 minutes in advance. That doesn't always work. Right? If we knew, and I told this story also, I'm going to repeat it again, it's worth telling. There was a chassid who came to Reb Chaim Sanzer, Reb Chaim Halberstam, 19th century Galicia. And he said he was a great Hasidic Rebbe, also one of the greatest Torah scholars of his time. And he said, "Rebbe, I don't know what to do." He says, "I work on myself, I get angry, and this, and this." And the Rebbe said, "You should learn this." And he said, "I did," and you should try this. He said, "I did." Everything that the Rebbe suggested, he said, "I tried. Didn't work." So the Rebbe said, "You know what? I need to think about it. Go out and sit outside the room. There's a chair out there. Go outside, and when I have an idea, I'll call you back in." Okay. So he goes outside, and the Rebbe's beadle, his gabbai, his sexton, his assistant, comes into the room, and the Rebbe says to him, "There's a guy sitting outside there. I want you to do anything you can to irritate him. I want to see him. I want to see how he loses his temper. Do anything you can to get him angry." So here I'm making this part up. So the guy says, "Oh, I can do that. No problem. I can't stand his guts anyway." No. Right? So he goes out of the room, and I don't know what he did. First he spilled coffee on him, and then he tripped over his feet. Whatever he did, it's okay. I can wash my suit. My feet were in the way. Whatever he did, the guy tried a whole bunch of things. It never worked. Right? So finally, after all these tests, he says to the assistant, the Rebbe called the assistant, and he said, "Call that guy back in." Right? So he comes in, and the Rebbe says to him, he says, "My gabbai was just in here. He told me that he did a bunch of things to you, and you didn't lose your temper once. And here you tell me you have such a terrible, terrible temper." Right? So he says, "Rabbi, I have to admit, when I left, you left the door open. And I heard what you said to him. And I knew you were testing me." So Chaim says, "Now you got it. If you understand that everything that happens to you, the irritations and that, it's all a test," he says, "then you won't lose it. If you understand that Hashem is testing you, just like you understood that I was testing you, you didn't lose it. You okay, he's testing me, so I can handle it. If we're able to think that Hashem is the one who's testing us, then we wouldn't get angry with people or things." That's what number one. Piggybacking on that, cowbacking, because last week we read about the non-kosher animals. Sorry, cowbacking on that. Yesterday I learned something. I was what was it? I was reading something I was on an airplane yesterday, and I read something which to me was something new about forgiveness. What is when a person asks for forgiveness? So somebody, how could you really forgive? So you forgive and you forget. People don't forget. Right? Just because you forgive doesn't mean you forget. When you forgive, do you really forgive? Right? So I, up until now, had defined that forgiveness means that I'll be nice to you. I'll treat you like anybody else. Meaning, before I didn't like you, and I either tried to avoid you or whatever. But I'm going to be nice to you. You won't see it, and I'm over it. I'm over it. Right? Is that forgiveness? I don't know. Somebody said, and I learned this yesterday, which I thought was really, I was going to save it for Yom Kippur, but it's too long to wait to share this. And that is if you understand that the person who hurt you, embarrassed you, insulted you, took something from you, may have done something wrong, but they were only the stick. They're not the ones who wielded the stick. It's like you imagine a dog is hit by a stick and the dog gets angry at the stick. The stick didn't hit you. It's the person who's holding the stick. Hashem is the same as the getting angry. Hashem is holding the stick. And you're being tested. He wanted this to happen to you, whether it was a test or whether it was a consequence of something that you did. The person was only the means by which this happened to you.
So you're saying that someone speaks Lashon Hara, it's not his fault.
Oh, now I'm angry with you. I said specifically not like that. I started off saying it doesn't mean the person is not responsible. It's a choice that he makes, and he has every responsibility to do it, and he's not allowed to hurt you, and he's responsible for hurting you. You know that was a play that I just did on you, but he is 100% responsible. But it was deemed that was meant to happen to you. It's like the Egyptians chose to enslave the Jews, even though there was a decree. It was they who chose to treat the Jews so harshly. This person chose to do this to you. He was the means, but Hashem didn't force him to do it. That was a choice that he made. But it was deemed that test was supposed to happen to you. Okay, so you get that? So he's still 100% responsible. 100% responsible.
That God made me do it.
Right, exactly. You were just trying to get me angry.
Yeah. And I know you weren't angry. You were just emphasizing your point.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay. So I'm saying the same thing with the test of not getting angry, the test of when something happens to you. If you're able to know that, then you can forgive. If you're able to know that, then you can really mean when you say, I was angry with you, but I really forgive you because now I've come to that recognition. You've still got to, I don't tell them off. It's not my job to tell them off. You still got to do your teshuvah. You've still got to make amends, etc., etc., etc. But I'm not mad at you. Now, we remember what we discuss every year on every Yom Kippur. If a person says, I'm going to seek forgiveness, and then I'll do it again, and I'll do it again, then I'll do it again, then you shouldn't forgive him because then you're just enabling him to do it again, right? But if somebody did something and that happened, even if he did it twice, if it's not something that's consistent, right, or he's not, then that would be an interesting possible strategy on how to forgive. Okay? And those who say, I forgive the Germans, it's not your place to forgive them. Those who forgive the terrorists, it's not your place to forgive them. Those who say, I saw this with the Christians after Charlie Kirk was murdered. His wife said, I forgive him. It's not your place to forgive him. He didn't murder you. If you wanna forgive him for the pain that he caused you, okay, go ahead. It's not your place to forgive him. That's God. And the justice system is supposed to do what it does, but it's not your place to forgive somebody who killed somebody else. Certainly not who killed 6 million. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Some good stories there and some very, very good lessons. In his humility, Reb Moshe also, he was once walking on the street and he heard somebody called Moshe, Moshe, and he turned around and he walked to the car and he said, yes. And the person who was in the car recognized who it was. And he said, what does the Rebbe want? He said, you just called me. He said, my son is across the street. He said, his name is Moshe, and I was calling him. I didn't even see you. If I would have seen you want to, I'd have jumped out of my car and gone to you. Right? But it didn't enter Moshe's mind. Like, he was being called Moshe. All right, so somebody called me Moshe. That's my name. He came running. It didn't occur to him, right, that the person wouldn't call him Moshe and that he was actually calling somebody else. Right? And there are many, many such stories like that. He was also... there was a lady who came to his house and somebody opened the door, and I guess this person was not a regular there, and said, how can I help you? He said, I want to speak to the rabbi. What would you like? So I think I told you so. She said, I have this letter that my sister in the Soviet Union wrote to me. It's in Russian. And I would like the rabbi to translate it because he used to be rabbi in Russia. So he knows Russian. And you don't come to the great rabbi of the generation and ask you, this was an older woman, to translate the letter into Russian. Dude, what are you talking about? He's been doing it for me for 20 years. For 20 years, this lady had been coming to Reb Moshe, and Reb Moshe, that's my responsibility. Somebody asks me a favor, I'm there and I can do it. Not so many people in the building probably were able to do it. So like, what's the big deal? He didn't think of himself and he didn't behave himself any way different than the average Joe because he was a humble person. He attributed his gifts to God. He knew what he was, and sometimes he even had to be tough. So I want to tell you a story where he had to be tough. A woman came to him and she said that she was in the Second World War, and her husband disappeared. So he died. So there's a big problem. After the war, there were thousands of cases where women didn't know what happened to their husbands. So sometimes there was proof of death. But if there was no proof of death, then she could still be married, right? And she's not supposed to remarry. So that's an agunah. That's called, she's anchored down. She's tied to the first marriage. There were rabbanim who worked day and night to try to find a heter, a halachic way for her to get remarried. This woman said that we were in the DP camps, and I heard that there was a great rabbi there, a certain rabbi. She said his name, and I told him what happened. And he did all the research, and he looked into it, and he asked the questions, and he did different things. And finally, he said, "You're allowed to get remarried," and he wrote me a document to get remarried. Now I remarried, and I had another family, right? And I had, and she's crying, but now I want to marry him, and the rabbi asks me, "Were you married before?" She said, "Yes, but my husband died in the war, or he died elsewhere." But so he said, "Okay, where's your heter agunah? Where's that letter you have?" It's a good thing to keep stuff like that, right? Well, she said, "I don't have it," and the rabbis are saying, if you don't have it, your children could be mamzerim. They could be children from a marriage where she wasn't divorced. We can't marry them. They could be mamzerim. And she's crying, says, "Rabbi, I don't know what to do." And Reb Moshe listens and listens to the details. And he says, "Repeat the story." It was hard enough for her to do it the first time. And she's crying, and she repeats the story. And Reb Moshe says, "Repeat the story again." This story was reported by Reb Meir Zlotowitz, who was there at the time. And they couldn't believe that somebody like Reb Moshe, who was the most sensitive of people, would actually ask her to repeat it 3 times. She repeated it a 3rd time, and Reb Moshe got up and he looked at her and he said, after the war, I was matir, which means I found a heter, a permit for more than 2,000 agunos. Hold on. I skipped the main part of the story. And she said, now my first husband showed up. He showed up, right? Showed up. And now people are saying, what's with so Reb Moshe says, repeat the story. And after 3 times he got up and he said, after the war, more than 2,000 agunos, I found the heter for. And never has the husband showed up. I know that rabbi who you're talking about. He died. The rabbi is gone. And he was a Talmud Chacham and a tzaddik, a scholar and a righteous person. He said, Reb Moshe is far greater than me. And it's impossible that min hashamayim, that from heaven they would have done this to him, that he would have given out a letter allowing you to get remarried when the husband wasn't dead. He said, I did more than 2,000. In heaven, they would not have allowed him. It can't be. And the woman broke down and she admitted that she was lying. And she said that her husband wasn't there. She didn't know what had happened to him. She didn't know what to do. So she remarried. When she heard that a great rabbi died, this rabbi, she concocted the story because she knew it would come into problems later on. And she made up the whole story. So Reb Moshe didn't sit there and listen to her and cry with her. Oh, he felt something was awry and he had to get the truth out of her. He made her repeat the story 3 times. So when he had to be, didn't mean he yelled at her, but when he had to be tough, You have to be tough to get to the truth. Reb Moshe was after the truth. Reb Moshe wasn't looking for leniencies. Reb Moshe wasn't looking for strict rulings. There are certain people, there's clearly certain rabbis out there that most of the time, not all the time, they would say strictly. And I'm talking about in any question. This one has a reputation for being more strict. This one has a reputation for being more lenient. Reb Moshe wasn't strict or lenient. Reb Moshe was, what does the halacha say? How he saw the halacha. Now, as I said before, there are times you can find certain leniencies for certain situations, right? But Reb Moshe didn't have a reputation. He had a reputation for finding leniencies when needed. That he did have a reputation because he was so brilliant and such a great Torah scholar that he could do that. So I want to close with one story.
Rabbi, so what
Yep.
happened to that lady? I mean, did she have to divorce?
She lived, then she died. I don't know the end of the story. It didn't say in the book. It only said that was the point of the story. There is not, in other words, I don't know. It's not reported what happened to her, but I would imagine that there was a problem with her children.
Here's the rabbi. How did the rabbi has said, after he kept on saying, repeat the story, how did he know that something was awry? Even if you thought that the rabbi was more lenient, who gave her the option to remarry, what do you think that rabbi understood about that conversation?
Rabbi Feinstein, we're talking about Rabbi Feinstein, right? So I don't know all the details of the conversation, so I cannot tell you what he heard. But what he said was that it's impossible that you're telling the truth with all the details because that wouldn't have happened to him. That's an inner feeling that only somebody like Reb Moshe could have. But I don't know what it was in the story. If there was something specific in the story, I don't know. Also, you're talking about years after the war. I don't know if it was 20 years after the war, 30 years after the war. People forget details. So even what Reb Moshe heard, we don't know if he heard, but it turned out that the story was concocted. Okay. I want to tell you another story that I
I
heard.
just tell you one. You know Dovey Heller, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I was at a funeral and he was the shomer. So I
Yes.
was speaking to him just last week. And he has a niece in Israel, and her wedding was all put up with the war and everything. So this is what he told me. I don't know if you heard of this. I think this is insane, but some authority in Israel said that because of the war, that during these 7 weeks, people could get married. And I said to Dovey, did they clear that with the guy upstairs? That's a pretty preposterous thing. And I don't know which authority in Israel said that, but I think the last thing I would be doing in Israel.
During which 7 weeks? During which 7 weeks? Now during the Omer?
Yeah, that they could get married during this time. I mean, isn't that preposterous that they would say no?
No. Because the whole idea of not getting married during this time, first of all, there is the reason that I say no offhand, I'm not being flippant at all, number one. Number two, I heard this during the 3 weeks last year before Tisha B'Av, which is a much more strict period. This is custom not to get married during this time, and it's not halacha. The Jewish people have accepted it, but it's not 7 weeks. There are certain groups that follow the first part of what we call the Omer, and they get married to the other part. Other parts follow the second part, and they get married during the first part. So even that's not agreed upon. So because I didn't hear this story, but I just want to give you a precedence. Last year, or maybe even 2 years ago, after October 7th, when Tisha B'Av came around, and many, many, many of the reservists were not there. There were many, many people who were supposed to get married, but they couldn't because they were at war and then they were going back to war. So the Rabbi Yosef, I don't know if it was David or Abraham Yosef, I don't know, I think his brother's name is Abraham, one of the two, Rabbi Vadia Yosef's sons, who are great people, they said that the only thing that is forbidden according to halacha is to get married the week of Tisha B'Av. The weeks before, the Sephardim don't get married for the 9 days before Tisha B'Av from Rosh Chodesh, and the Ashkenazim 3 weeks. And he said, because the situation is so dire and people are not able to get married, and it's the same thing now because halls are not available and people are being called up, and halls weren't available in Israel now because so many people were trying to cram into marriages because of the war, and they couldn't get married because the authorities didn't allow it. This wasn't a rabbinic thing. This was just the authorities didn't allow it because of gatherings. So there was a crunch, and you can't just hold back people from getting married. So because it's only a custom and it's not a halacha, and that's why they permitted it. Okay, I hope.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, let me tell you one final story that I heard from a man named Rabbi Ginsburg, who is the person in this story. I heard this from Rabbi Ginsburg himself, and I actually spoke about him after I heard him say it on a video. I went and spoke to him about it because I played a little bit of a role afterwards. And by the way, I only met Rabbi Feinstein a few times in my life. Right after I got married, 2-3 days after I got married, I took my wife to meet him. I had to make an appointment 2 months. He was already 90 years old, and maybe 91, and he had a minion in his house. He could no longer go to the yeshiva to daven. And 2 months beforehand, around sometime in the fall, I made an appointment to daven in his house because they limited it very much. You couldn't just walk in, otherwise they would have a big crowd every morning. And I had to show my identification when I walked in to show that I was the one who called. They didn't want any people pulling any strings. So the funny thing was, I just got married, had my tallis bag with my name on it. I just showed my tallis bag. I said, okay, my tallis bag doesn't have my picture, but they trusted me. Anyway, so I took Chaya to see him, and we got a blessing from him right after we got married. It was we davened Shachris with him, and then so that was a very wonderful experience. Although I was stood in awe of him. Like I know I did it, and I remember a picture or two in my mind, but it's a haze because it was like, wow, Anyway, you know what? It's 11:55. Beli Netta, if I remember, I'll tell this story next week. It's going to take me 6 or 7 minutes to tell the story, and I don't want to do that to the students of Reb Tzvi who eagerly await him. So thank you very much for listening.
Double Parsha this week. Next week, Parsha say more, single Parsha. And after that, another double Parsha. A lot of work, a lot of work. So I hope you're all living the spheros and adjusting your character. Today is Malchus Shabbat Tiferes. So Tiferes is the week of balance and beauty, and Malchus is the culmination of that week, which really inculcates all of the other midos, the Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, and Yisod are all inculcated into Malchus of the week of Tiferes. So it really is a completion of that midah of balance and beauty. So that's where we are today. So I just opened up by just saying, I hope everybody's living the Tzfiros, as opposed to just counting the Tzfiros. It's the mitzvah to count it, but if you can live it and change yourself as a result of it, that's something to maybe try to work on.
Did you just have to find it in this book? Thank you.
Something here. Spiras are Omer's.
Oh, thank you very much.
Counting the Omer. The Omer is a korban.
So which Spiros that live by that you're referring to? There's going to the Hasidic,
Right. So that's the spheros that are Hashem's emanations into this world, also called spheros.
right.
Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malchus. And so that's
There are more days than there are.
no.
There are 49 days in Sphira, and there's only 6 spheres. So you have
Oh, there's
to
7.
beat them over.
Oh, there's 7. 7 sevens. 7 sevens. There's 49, 49. Amazing. What a coincidence.
Maybe that number's special.
Maybe it is.
It stayed the same way all these years, no inflation.
How about that?
7 doesn't come 8. and
Wow.
9.
Oh, wow. So,
6.
I want to talk a little bit about numbers. I mention this all the time. It's one of the things that I kind of live by. It kind of is part of my life. But the physical world is 6: north, south, east, west, up, down. Creates a cube around us. That's the physical world. Within that space is the 7th, which is Shabbos, which is the kedusha of the physical world. But it's still below the world. Above the world is 8, right? And 8 is the spheres of Keser, Chochman, Bina, which is above. It's sometimes called 8, the 8. So all of Sefer Vayikra is above the world. It's not talking about Karbonos. It's talking about the Mishkan. It's talking about things we don't even have now. And we're supposed to try and put those in our lives in the best way we can. We have to figure out how to do that. It's hard, but everything is above the world. And so every Parsha in Sefer Vayikra, which are 10 total Parshas in Vayikra, we are halfway through, right? We finished last week with Metzora, which is the 5th Parsha, and then Acharei Mos is the 6th Parsha, and it's those 5 more Parshas to the end. We have double Parsha, then a more, and then another double Parsha. So we have 5 more. So we're right in the middle. So every Parsha has 8s. The first Parsha, which was Parsha Vayikra itself, about their Karbonos. There are 8 basic types of Karbonos. And then we had Parshat Tzav, which is about the begodim of the Kohen Gadol, of which there are 8. There's Parsha Shemini, which is the only Parsha in the entire Torah that's called a number. And what is Shemini? 8. And then we had last week, then we had last week Tazriach Mitzora, double Parsha. Tazriach is about, it starts off by women giving birth and having to bring Karbonos after certain times. And it says there that after 7 days, she's tummy after 7 days after giving birth to a boy. And then the boy has bris on his 8th day. And that's also teaching us that the 8th day is above Shabbos, because if a baby boy is born on Shabbos and he's healthy, even though the process of the bris is going to be something that would otherwise, if it was done on Shabbos without a bris, it would be Mechalel Shabbos. It's not, because it's above Shabbos. The 8 is above Shabbos. And now in this week, we have Acharei Mos Kedoshim. So, Metzora, and Metzora, the process of the Metzora in Parshat Metzora is an 8-day process. He brings Karbonos on the 8th day. So all 8 so far. Parshat Acharei Mos is about Yom Kippur. The Gemara tells us that the Kohen Gadol was secluded for 7 days before Yom Kippur. So he would not be tummy, because if he's tummy, he can't do the service. So they appointed, they had a Sagana Kohen, they had a backup in case. Never happened, because they protected him for 7 days from getting tummy. They secluded him in a place where he would not be able to come into contact with anything that would cause him to be tummy. Okay. And then they would keep him up all night, the last night, because he could have a tuma of a self, emission that night, which would make him tummy. So they kept him up all night so that he would not lose control, and he would be safe from tumah in that way. And so it's really Yom Kippur then is on the 8th day. There's 7 days of sequestration, and then Yom Kippur is really on the 8th day. So that's the 8th day for Acharei Mos. Also, the number of psukim in Parshat Acharei Mos is 80, which is 8 to the 10th. Okay. Then the second parsha that we have this week is Kedoshim. So for many, many years, I was not able to find the 8 in Kedoshim. David once suggested to me many years ago, I don't know if you remember, maybe you could use the English letters, because if you spell out Kedoshim in English, there's 8 letters. I don't think that works. But that was your suggestion for it. A few years ago, Robert Fold, David, who's not, I don't think, and he's not on. Oh, there he is on. So he suggested to me, he said, you know what? He said, how many psukim there are in Parshat Kedoshim? 64.
Oh, wow.
How about that? 8 squared. There it is. That's the 8 in Kedoshim. We are at the highest point, I think, in Sefer Vayikra. We're right in the middle of it, right? And so we are at really such a high point of Kedusha, of holiness, because we're at the 8th level many times up. And if we can just try to grab onto some of that Kedusha and bring it into Greenwood Village, Colorado, 2026, and hold on to that Kedusha and infuse our lives with it, we can really use this to really try to gain that level of Kedusha. And what I'm going to try and do today is take you through a little bit of Yom Kippur, but then really spend times on Parshat Kedoshim. Parshat Kedoshim has 53 mitzvahs. It's 53 mitzvahs, and actually Parshat Acharei, it has a lot of mitzvahs too. I think it has 18. So together, there's a lot of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs give us the opportunity by our actions to raise up the level of where we're holding spiritually. And so the more mitzvahs, the more spiritual. So that's what we're trying to do today. What I'll try to do is take us through, what I've done is divided up the 53 mitzvahs in Kedoshim into different categories. And so we can grab onto some of them. We won't be able time to talk about all 53, but to talk about them in terms of categories to see what we're talking about. And what are the things that bring Kedusha into our physical lives? How can we do that? Tom?
Is this the parasha where most of the Yom Kippur service, like this is the Yom Kippur service?
This is the Yom Kippur service,
Like
right?
no other parasha.
Right, this is it. And we lane this parsha, we lane Acharei Mos on Yom Kippur. In the morning, we lane chapter 16. There are 3 chapters in Acharei Mos, 16, 17, and 18. Chapter 16 is about Yom Kippur. Chapter 17 is about being forbidden to offer offerings outside of the Mishkan or outside of the Beis HaMikdash. And chapter 18 is about the prohibited relationships, called Gilui Arayos. Those are the 3 things. On Yom Kippur, we lane chapter 16 in the morning and in the afternoon, because on every fast day, we lane in the afternoon as well. And also on Shabbos afternoon, we lane in the afternoon. And we lane in the afternoon the Gilui Arayos. We lane chapter 18, which is about the forbidden relationships. And that's the laning. And then, of course, we do the Haftorahs from Yonah. It's the whole book of Yonah.
You say Acharei Mot, though, you're saying after death?
After death. What does that mean, after death? So what it talks about is it's after the deaths of Aaron's 2 sons, Nadav and Avihu, who died in Parsha Shmini, when they brought in a strange fire into the Heichal, and there's a lot of discussion about what they did wrong, and there's also a lot of discussion about the fact that they did right. Even we talked about last week, or we talked about when we talked about Parsha Shmini, that in fact that Moshe said to Aaron, I thought that it was going to be either you or me. I knew that Hashem was wanted to be sanctified when we dedicated the Mishkan. I thought it would be either me or you, but I see now that Nadav and Avihu are even greater than we are. So there's another side to it. They didn't do everything wrong. So the Yom Kippur service starts off by telling Aaron how he can go into the Kodesh Kedoshim and not die. Right? Rashi says, just a little, very quick little.
Kodesh Kedoshim is?
Kodesh Kedoshim is the Holy of Holies. So the way that the Mishkan and the way that the temple are divided is there's something called the Heichal, which is the general sanctuary, in which was the menorah, the shulchan, the table, and the golden mizbeach.
Mhm.
And that was 2/3 of the building. And then the last third of the building, the furthest west, the last part of the building is called the Kodesh Kedoshim. That's where the Aron was. And that is where the Kohen Gadol would go into once a year, only on Yom Kippur. And he would have 2 services in there. I'll take you through the 5 services in a second.
It's like the most holy place.
The most holy place on the most holy day with the most holy person.
Mhm.
That's in Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
You go, that shul, and they say it's the closest to the Holy of Holies. Do they think that that's what's in?
So,
there?
I don't know exactly the spot, but, if you go to the Kosel, it's over there somewhere. It's there somewhere. And that's why we're not allowed to go up. Jews are not allowed to go up on the other side of the kosel, because we may be going into the Kodesh Kedoshim, and the only person supposed to go there is the Kohen Gadol, only one day a year, right? And after the service, after doing the service. So, but we don't know. I don't know if we know exactly where it is. Maybe somebody does. I don't know. If I remember going on a tour in the 80s in Eretz Israel when I was with Federation, and when you go to the Christian sites, they say, this is exactly the 2 inches where Jesus was in the crib, right? But in the Jewish side, well, it was kind of over there. It was City of David over there, not down to the, that's the way I remember it anyway.
So we dug it out and we knew it.
So I'll just read you a quick Rashi about Acharei, because the pasuk starts off and it says, Hashem spoke to Moshe after the death of Aaron's 2 sons. So Rashi says, why does the Torah say this? Exactly your question, Mr. Schwartz. Why does the Torah say it this way? That's Rashi's question. So he brings from the Gemara from the Tana Elazar ben Azariah, who says it can be compared to a sick person to whom a doctor entered to treat. And he said, don't eat cold food. Don't lie in a damp, chilly place. The doctor came back, and then he said to him, don't eat cold food. Don't die in a damp, chilly place, and you will not die. In the first time when he told him, he just said, don't eat cold food. Don't sit in a damp, chilly place. No consequence. But here, Hashem is telling Aaron, don't go in here so that you will not die. Because you know what happened to Nadav and Avihu, because they went in the wrong way. And so therefore, don't do it in that way. So it's really kind of emphasizing it in that way. So the second doctor roused in him, more than the first, because he gave him the consequence. So that's just a little Rashi on your point.
I thought only the Kohen Gadol was allowed to go in. How come Nadav and Avihu went into the Kodesh Kodeshim?
They weren't supposed to. That's what happened.
They
were not supposed to. They brought in a strange fire. They did something that wasn't commanded of them.
At the wrong time.
At the wrong time, in the wrong people. Okay. In Parshat Acharei, I'm only going to talk about chapter 16, which is on Yom Kippur, and I'm just going to take you through because it's very confusing in the parsha as to how it works. So I'll just take you through. There are 5 services that are done in Yom Kippur. 5 is a really important number also. The Yud Kei Vav Kei, there are 4 letters. And so that is a name that really, 4 is a very important number that comes into Yiddishkeit. But also there's called the Kutra Shel Yud, the point of the Yud, where it goes from the Ein Sof world into the highest of the 4 worlds called the Tzilas. And that's just a junction point. But that's 5. And if you notice in the Seder that we have a lot of 4s that morph to 5. You have the 4 cups of wine, but you have the 5th cup of wine because that's what happens in the future. That's when Eliyahu comes. You have the 4 sons who are at the Seder, but you have a 5th son who's not at the Seder, who when Mashiach comes, he will be at the Seder, right? And so basically you have it over and over again, 4 to 5. So this is a same situation in Yom Kippur. It's the only day of the year that we have 5 services. On Yom Tif, we have 4 services. On Shabbos, we have 4 services. During the week, we have 3 services. But on Yom Kippur, we have 5 services. We go all the way to the top on Yom Kippur because we have a Ne'ilah. So the 5 services that we have are that we daven are I don't know if reminiscence is the right word, but they are to emulate what the Kohen Gadol did in his 5 services. So in the 5 services, 3 of them he does with his regular 8 garments that have gold on them. And those are the regular services of the day. That's the Shachris in the morning, it's the Musaf, and it's the Mincha in the afternoon. And then there are 2 special services where he wears only 4 linen garments, all white, no gold, because the prosecutor cannot be made the defender. And he's going to be the defender of the Jewish people because he is now going to be the one that is going to be doing the offerings that are required in order to get forgiveness for himself and his family, for the Kohanim, for the Leviim, and for all of Klal Yisrael. And so he has to be the defender. So he goes in and he does these services in white. They're the service number 2 and service number 4. Service number 2 is where he brings in a bull and a goat as what are called inside offerings, where the blood is offered on the inside. So he goes all the way to the Kodesh Kadoshim, all the way to the holiest place, and he sprinkles blood there between when the Aron was there, between the staffs of the Aron, 7 times, up, 1 time down. He does that with the goat. Then he brings them out, and he does 7 times towards the curtains, which is the dividing point between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kadoshim. And he does that for the bull and the goat. Then he mixes them together, and then he puts the blood on the golden altar. Then he takes the blood out. And that's the bull and the goat that are forgiveness of certain things relating to being tummy. Then there's another goat. There's 2 goats. They have to be identical. Goats are reminiscent of Yaakov and Esav. And they're picked by lottery called a goral as to which is going to be which. There's a goral that says Lashem, and there's a goral that says Azazel. And so the Kohen picks up the lotteries, whichever goat's in front of him with the Azazel, that's the one that's going to go to the cliff and get pushed off the cliff. That's the one that carries all the sins of the Jewish people with it, that brings forgiveness for the Jewish people. And the Lashem he-goat is the he-goat that I just described that goes and is offered on the inside.
Yaakov could have been Esav, and Esav could have been Yaakov.
Could have been.
Flip of the coin.
Exactly. And until they were 15, actually, they couldn't really, when they were born, they could tell them apart. But then until they were 15, they couldn't tell them apart. And then at 15, Esav went out and did things that made it very clear who he was. He committed 5 averos. And Yaakov was studying in the tent. And so it made it clear who it was. But it's picked by Hashem. You know, in last week's Parsha, in Parsha Metzorah, where the Metzorah takes 2 birds, the 2 birds are just taken randomly. There's no lottery or anything. But those 2 birds, one of them is shechted because that's trying to get rid of the bad speech. But we can't get rid of all speech because we need speech to pray and to learn and to, help people and to cheer people up and things like that. So that's no, it's not Kapporos. So this is the bird that's then sent out, because we can't destroy that speech. We've got to differentiate in our speech. But in that case, there's no lottery. It's just happenstance, life and death, right? This one's going to die. This one's going to live. The same in the case of the goats, they're both going to die, but one's going to be pushed off a cliff and one's going to be offered inside the Mizbeach. But it shows you how much more important it is, because what we're doing is, in the goats, it's spirituality versus non-spirituality. It's spiritual life versus non-spiritual life. Whereas in the birds, it's physical life versus non-physical life. So that it's more important to have the lottery, because that's Hashem's choosing for us. Right? It's coming through. It's coming from Hashem, that girl. Okay, so those are the 5 services. Then he does the morning service, does it all himself. He then and before he does the service, has to go to the mikveh. He washes his hands before he goes to the mikveh. Washes his hands when he gets out from the mikveh. right? And he puts on his 8 garments. And then he does service number 1. Then he washes his hands, gets undressed, goes to the mikveh a second time, gets out of the mikveh, washes his hands, puts on his white garments. Then he does the inside service with the goat and the bull. Then when he completes that service, he washes his hands, he takes off his white clothing, he then puts on his blue and gold clothing, the 8 garments, he then washes his hands, and then he does the Musaf service. Which is the regular kind of service that's done on any holiday with bringing korbanos.
How many times a day does he have to change his clothes?
Changes his clothes 5 times. 5 times. Changes his clothes 5 times. He goes to the mikveh 5 times. He washes his hands 10 times.
That many linen jackets to put on?
He only needs, he probably only has 1 set of linen clothing, right? That he wears it once in the morning, once in the afternoon.
But now when Kohanim go to the bima
Yeah,
and they're not wearing white,
right.
why has that changed? That a man could just go up in a suit and.
On the regular service, he's not wearing white. He's only wearing white 1 day a year, only on Yom Kippur. And basically we all wear white on Yom Kippur, right? I mean, ladies wear white on Yom Kippur. Most men wear a kittel, or if not a kittel, at least a white shirt or something like that. And not but on the rest of the days of the year, then they wear the regular uniform.
All 5 services involve sacrifice, so he basically.
So
changing
the
sacrifice.
4th one does not. The 4th one, because in the second one, he goes in with the bull and the he-goat, and he also goes in with the ketoras. And he goes in, he has a shovel of coals, and he has the ketoras under another arm, and he has to do mole hafna, it's called, where he has to flip the ketoras onto the coals, right? And then the incense goes up, and the smoke rose straight up from the middle of the room, up to the top of the ceiling, then out in all the different directions, down the walls, over the floor, and back up again. I wasn't there, but that's what I was told. That's what I was told.
Must have different people helping him with the bull, because I've seen bulls and you don't mess with bulls. I mean, they're huge, they're angry. How does he slaughter a bull? I mean, it's not a simple thing.
In a white outfit.
Right, in a white outfit. And so then he leaves the shovel and the incense censer in the Kodesh Kedoshim. So then he goes out and does the Musaf, and then on the 4th service, the only thing he does is go back in and get those and bring them back. But he changes in the white in order to be able to do that. And then he comes back out, and then he does the final service of the day. And then he goes home, and he's, we sing a song afterwards,
And you said the goat represents Yaakov and
Esau.
The bull.
The bull is a kapora for Aaron because of the golden calf.
Exhausting day. And he's not eating.
He's not eating.
And not sleeping.
And not sleeping. Not sleeping. Absolutely.
Question I want to ask, what is it about the blood and the whole Tameh thing? Where does that emanate from? That he's got to keep on uniquely using the blood of the animals to adhere to his position?
So I don't know if I can answer your question, Vicky, because the Torah prescribes the blood service. The blood is the key to all the animal sacrifices. There are 4 services for each sacrifice that are what are called ma'akev. They're essential. If they're not done, it's not a kosher korban. One is the shechita. One is the collecting the blood called the Kabbalah Saddam, the receiving of the blood. One is taking the blood over to the altar, and one is doing the Zrika Saddam, which is putting the blood on the altar. All of the animal sacrifices have that. Bird sacrifices have something similar to it. There's something parallel in a korban mincha, which is a grain offering, that parallel those 4 steps, but it's not with blood. But the blood is a key thing. We're not allowed to eat blood, right? It's the blood of these animals is the Torah calls it their nefesh. Every living thing, everything, even like vegetables and rocks, have what's called a nefesh. They have a spiritual aspect to them that brings about certain kinds of levels of life. And animals are up right under humans, and they have this nefesh, and the blood represents that nefesh. The nefesh is something that flows through the entire body. It's the lowest level of the 5 levels of the soul that we have, which is another reason we're doing 5 services on Yom Kippur, because we're elevating all 5 levels of our neshama. The nefesh, the ruach, the neshama, the chaya, and the yechida, those are the 5 levels of the neshama. And those are all elevated by the services that are done on Yom Kippur. And so the blood represents that nefesh, which is the basic spark of life, and it flows through the body like the blood. You know how the blood through the capillaries goes all the way, to the fingertips and the toes and all around. The nefesh also does that.
Observing that all the animals that have to be shechted all have warm blood, like a fish has like cold blood, or like reptiles have like cold blood, but like birds and mammals, which have to be shechted, and you can eat fish blood, I believe, is like okay. So has it anything to do with the warmth of the blood?
Not that I know of.
Or
it's a nice observation, but I don't know that it
Yeah.
makes a difference. But there's another interesting thing. Do you know what the Markava is?
no,
No. Okay. All right. Never mind.
Chariot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a chariot,
yeah,
and there are four faces on that chariot.
okay,
Do you know what they are? Human,
yeah,
lion,
okay,
ox, eagle.
okay,
Those are the 4 kings, so to speak, the 4 heads of these 4 species. Human,
yeah,
right? Shore is the head of the domesticated animals. The lion's the head of the wild animals. And the eagle is the head of the birds.
okay.
No fish. No fish.
Or reptile either.
Or reptile either.
Yeah,
So maybe it has something to do. I don't know. Could be something to do with that.
but
Because maybe they're subordinate. Because maybe they're all subordinate to these other 4 levels.
okay, because I mean warmth of the blood seems to be something.
I think you're right.
Some blood has the number of chambers and parts.
So this, I'm behind everybody else. What is this chariot you're talking about? And what can I Google? That makes it easier.
Google chariot.
Just chariot? Come on. It hasn't
I
had
don't think that
nothing.
There is a concept, Kabbalistic concept of a Markava. It's called the Markava. It's talked about in the Gemara in Hagiga. It's called Meiser Markava, and that's how Hashem emanates into this world through the things that are on that are bringing his spirituality into this world.
Into those words, I'm gonna find them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Reb Zvi,
Yes,
just a
Rebbe
quick,
Itta, Rebbetzin Itta.
please no. Is the face of the human Yaakov? Whose face is it?
It's probably Adam HaRishon,
Oh,
probably Adam HaRishon, because it's above that level. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are also a part of that chariot, part of that Markava. And they say that Yaakov's face, the angels, when Yaakov had the dream with the ladder, and the angels were going up and coming down, and the ladder, and they were comparing how this person looked in the bottom that was asleep, that was Yaakov, with the face that was on the Kisei HaKovod. Now, the Kisei HaKovod could be equivalent to the chariot. That's the throne of glory, the Kisei HaKovod.
And this is from the Tanakh. Is it Ezekiel? Do you know the prophet that talks about the Markava?
Yes. If you go to Ezekiel, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that's Yom Kippur. Okay,
Let's finish.
I'll finish with Yom Kippur. It was a quick Yom Kippur. I now want to go into Parshat Kedoshim, which is the second Parsha, which starts on 656, 657. There are a few parshas in the Torah where Hashem says to Moshe, Daber el kol hadas b'nei Israel. Speak to the entire assembly of the Jewish people, all 603,550 men over the age of 20, and all the women and all the kids that are under the age of 20. Speak to all of them so they all get assembled. So speak to the Kol Hadas B'nai Israel. Those are very important parshas when that happens. Nitzavim is one in Sefer Devorim, which is right before Rosh Hashanah, and so they're really kind of raising the whole level of importance. And what's
Eruv, Rob?
What?
What about the Eruv, Rob? I mean, you said.
It says B'nai Israel. It doesn't say Eruv. It says B'nai Israel.
Nobody's checking the stream.
Okay. So, and what does Hashem say then that Moshe is supposed to speak to Kol Hadas B'nai Israel, to all of the assembly of the B'nai Israel? Any guesses?
Hashem tells them
Kedoshim to you, be holy, be holy. What's holy?
separate.
Separate. Kiddush, holy, separate. Special. Very good. Right?
Sanctified.
But pardon?
Kiddush, kadosh, sanctified.
Sanctified. Right?
Made whole or consecrated, like at the wedding say you shall be consecrated.
Yeah, that's right. We do Kedushin, right? When we get married, it's done by a Kedushin because we're sanctifying that relationship, right? And what we're doing is we're separating the woman now. She can't be with any other man. Right?
But we're not separating the man. He can be with other women.
That's true. But the Kedushin is being done with the woman, right?
Well, that was then. This is now.
Well, because
Okay.
because then.
But it's also to set yourself aside to be example to the world.
You know, do you know that there's something called a Kadesha? You know what that is? A prostitute.
Yeah.
Same word.
No, isn't that
Same word. Isn't that interesting?
Because she's separate.
There's words in Hebrew, many words in Hebrew actually that are opposite, kind of have opposite meanings. Chesed is one of those words, which means loving kindness, but also the prohibition of having relations with a sister is also called chesed, because these things can actually, when they're taken too far, create the opposite effect. To be chesed and to be kind, to be loving kind to the right people at the right time in the right way, that's cool. To take it too far and to be kind, loving kindness to the wrong people or in the wrong time or in the wrong
We
way,
see that now.
that takes it too far. So we can have that. So Kadesha and Kiddush could be the same thing. That's really what it is a separation from one end to the other. And that what we're doing in the third bracha in the Shemona Esrei, first bracha is about the avos. Second bracha is about the powers of Hashem. Tchias amazing, right? Culminates with the Tchias amazing. The third bracha is about Kedusha. Acknowledging that although we may not know why Hashem does the things in the world that he does, but we acknowledge that he is Kodesh, that he knows more than we, right? And that it's perfect. And so that's the Kedusha. So he's saying to us, but you Jewish people, you need to know that you are Kodesh. You are above. You are separated from the rest of the world. You are a special people.
But that's the safety factor.
That's a safety
That's
factor.
the safety factor, because you said wealth would describe your relationship. So the safety factor is that God's telling you whether you understand that it makes you safer or not. It makes you safe to at least adhere to what's going on. Because then sometimes the chesed could bring you into.
Right, so that's where we're supposed to be balancing our chesed, right? But I'm not following you in terms of making it safer. I don't know what it means safer.
Sometimes people say, well, if I go this far, then and I'll find a way to protect myself. I think that if you go too far with your kindness and your openness, you find yourself in a stressful situation.
I'm going to just twist it a little bit, what you're saying, because Nadav and Avihu took this Kedusha to a level that did become harmful to them.
It didn't work.
It did become harmful to them.
Mhm.
They took it to a level beyond the Kedusha. So maybe that's right. We have to live within where we are in our Kedusha. We have to strive to be Kodesh.
Yes. And I read somewhere, I don't know where, that vices are virtues taken to extreme. And
I can see that.
what's a virtue in a little amount is a vice.
Can be.
If it's like
Everything in moderation, right?
excessive.
Everything. How about heroin? How about cocaine?
Okay.
Yeah, you're back in the desert.
So what I'd like to do now, from now until the end, until 1 o'clock, is to go through and I'll share with you how I've divided these 51 mitzvahs in this parsha into categories, because what Moshe is telling us is, he's saying, Hashem says to Moshe, speak to the entire assembly of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for holy am I. And then it ends, the pasuk ends with Hashem Elokeichem. Hashem Elokeichem means that I, Hashem, am your Elokeichem. Now, Hashem is the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is above all the other names. Elohim is how we experience the powers of Hashem in this world. That's Elohim. We also say that Hashem is Rachamim and Elohim is Din, is justice. Mishpat, yeah. Okay, so that's what he's saying. So now we're now going to have a list of to-dos and to not to-dos that, if we follow them, are going to make us holy. So the first several start off. I think they're bookends. The parsha begins with these, and it ends with similar things to these. And these are really three things. And it starts off very curiously to me with revering one's father and mother. This is not kivud avim. This is not honoring one's father and mother. This is revering. This is revering. So revering is holding in awe someone and realizing how much you owe those people. Okay? And it's, I think, because in the Aseret Adibras, in the Ten Commandments, so-called Ten Commandments, it's the fifth commandment. It's on the side between man and God. not on the side between man and man. Because it's acknowledging that there's really three entities that create a person. The mother, the father, Hashem.
What about parents who are not worthy of reverence?
So there's nothing that says that you have to love your parents, but you do have to revere your parents, and you do have to. So, for example, even if you hate your father, you don't sit in his seat. You don't sit in his seat. You don't contradict him, right? You revere him, even though you cannot stand him in any way, and you don't have to be around him. But if you are around him, then you have to revere him, and you have to honor him. So if he needs a glass of water, you need to give him a glass of water.
Don't contradict. I don't know about that.
What if it's
Father
going
said,
against?
go rob that bank. You can say, no, I won't. That's not being irreverent.
You don't have to go do it, but you don't contradict him. So if the father says, I think that today is the 23rd of April. So you don't have to contradict and say, I think it's the 24th.
That's a relatively inconsequential thing.
Okay, so put your own example on it, right? You're being silly a little bit, David. You're really being a little silly, I think.
But what about a parent abuses a kid? Then you can leave.
I'm saying, so if a parent abuses a child, so don't be around the parent. There's nothing that says you have to be around the parent. Nothing says you have to love the parent. But if you are around the parent, then there are certain ways that you need to act or not act, and you can't be confrontational and combative with the parent.
Yeah.
Isn't there something about when your parent goes against Torah? How does that come in?
Right. So that comes in here because the next thing that happens is it talks about Shabbos. If the father were to tell the child not to keep Shabbos, the child doesn't follow that. Doesn't follow that. Because the child has to follow Shabbos. The parent has to follow Shabbos. They'll have to follow Hashem. So, I mean, if you see a parent is going to kill somebody, then you can stop him from killing him, right? Because that's pekuach nefesh, right? So I don't know what you're trying to get at here. You're trying to just needle me, or
A parent who is destroying the child's life by being.
He's worked with a lot of
overly
abused kids.
Oh, I see. So then you get them to a very wonderful foster home like the Levines.
There are
You take them to the Levines.
There are a lot of bad experiences in foster home.
Okay, but not in the Levine foster home.
So if the parent says you can drive on Shabbos, you don't drive on Shabbos, but you don't disagree with it.
Right. I think you don't get in an argument with a parent. I think you don't, you're trying not to get in an argument with the
I
parent.
think what you're saying for this mitzvah, you need to recognize I wouldn't be here if I didn't have. this
Correct,
parent.
correct.
That's why I wouldn't exist.
I owe life to my parents.
Right.
And life is extremely important thing.
Yes, it's interesting that honoring parents isn't in the seven Noahide laws.
Correct, it's not.
They are not, non-Jews are not obligated to honor.
And do you know where the Gemara teaches us how to do the mitzvah of Kivud Avim? From the Sina, from Dasa ben Nesina, who's a non-Jew.
From who?
Dasa ben Nesina. Dama ben Nesina.
What is his story?
His story is that he had a stone that the Rabbanan wanted to use to make the breastplate. Very valuable stone. It was locked in a safe. And his father had the key, and his father was sleeping. And he had the key under his pillow. And they went to him and they said, we're going to give you a gazillion whatevers for this stone. Will you get it for us? And he said, no, I'm not waking up my father. I'm not waking up my father. And we take a lesson from that. Now, what happened to him afterwards was that he was given a para aduma. Hashem had his herd produce a red heifer. And the rabbis came and they said, we we want to buy this red heifer from you. He said, fine, pay me the amount that you were going to pay me for the stone before, and I'll give you the red heifer. So he got rewarded. So we see that, unfortunately, his reward was only in Olam Hazeh. Our reward for Kibbud Avim or for Yiras Avim is in Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. It's one of the mitzvahs. There's 10 mitzvahs that we say in the morning after we say Birchas HaTorah, that we have the Karen in the next world, the principle in the next world, and we still get the Paros in this world. And one of them is Kibbud Avim.
I mean, I don't want to get too far off tangent, but it's interesting in the stories of King David, there was a lot of disrespect of the sons of King David, for example.
Absolutely.
I mean,
we're
he took David's concubines to the rooftop and
absolutely.
pretty disrespectful.
We're not a perfect people. We're not a people of perfect people. They're not a people of perfect people.
Went to visit the elderly in Israel, and I met a man, and I'm going to bring this book, 88 years old, in Russian, Hebrew, and English. He wrote this amazing story about all the jewels, everything that Kohanim wore on the breastplate. And it's an incredible book. I don't know how, like you said, you never know the makom you're going to be. And this man, he presented this book to me on his research. And now you're talking about the breastplate and the jewels, and that this man would wake up his dad.
Right.
Yet this man was 88 years old, and he was completely awake on the world of his fathers and mothers.
Percy, have you read the book Alchemist?
No.
There's a character in that with a plate, with a chest plate, with I think there's a Jew involved. I better find out about it.
Okay. So the third one of the beginning list is Avodah Zorah. Not believing in other gods. So and these three things are really very parallel to three of the Aseres HaDibros, right? Kibbud Avim, Shabbos, and Avodah Zorah. Okay. Then the next category is giving to others. So first category is recognizing how important Hashem is. Avodah Zorah, Shabbos, and Kibbud Avim. Next category is to be Kodesh, one has to give to others. One needs to give to others. So we have obligations like Peah, where we leave over the corners of the field so that people can come and glean. It's not a demeaning type of charity in a way, because they're working for what they're getting, and they're getting it. Also, there's leket. Leket is where they're gathering in the grain with a sickle, and if one or two things drop, you have to leave them there. More than two drop, you can pick them up, but if one or two drop, you leave them for the gleaners. And then shikacha. Shikacha is where you're lining up the sheaves to then gather them in, and you start gathering them in, and you forgot one or two at the beginning of the row, you have to leave them there for the gleaners to come in, for the people to come in. And the same thing is true with regard to the grapes of the vineyard. There's similar things that happen with regard to that. And so that's giving to others, giving to others in a way that is not creating a dependency. When we talk about chesed in the Shemona Esrei, we say gamilas chasodim. Gamel means to nurse. Gomel also means to withdraw from the nursing, right? Because it says when Yitzhak had been Gomel by Sarah, that's when they had the party. That's when they celebrated by having the party.
Say that again. What does it mean?
Gomel means to withdraw from nursing as well as to nurse. Wean, to wean. Thank you. Yeah, withdraw from nursing. That's silly.
Say again. So Sarah weaned herself. She
weaned Yitzhak. She weaned Yitzhak. That's Gomel. That's what Gomel meant. Gomel is also a word for camel, because a camel can go out on his own for a long, long, long time because he fills his humps up with water, right? And he goes out for a long, long time.
Gomel is a bracha, you say when.
Gomel is
Yeah.
it is. Gomel is a bracha that we say when you've traveled overseas, or when you've traveled over a desert, or when you've recovered from an illness, or where you've gotten out of jail.
The family name Gimel is the same as Camel?
Gimel would be the same, right? Same word, right? Gimel Lamed, Gimel Mem Lamed.
Yeah.
So Gamel means to wean. So when it says in the Shemona Esrei, it says Gamilas Chasodim, it means we give loving kindness in a way that doesn't create dependency. To wean people from, that's why the Rambam says the highest forms of tzedakah are giving a person a job, or going into partnership with a person, or making a person a loan so he can go into business himself. And so that way the person has respect. Otherwise, if you create the dependency, then you create a very not good situation. Okay, so that is then the type of giving that we're supposed to give to others. And then don't take from others. This is the next category, and this is the prohibition to deny the monetary obligation of another, the prohibition to swear falsely in denial of a monetary obligation, the prohibition to swear falsely, the prohibition to withhold monetary obligations, that is, to not pay workers on time, the prohibition to rob, the prohibition to delay payment, the prohibition to curse a Jew. There's a whole list of these things. And so those are prohibitions that are designed not to hurt others. Not to hurt others. It's the kind of the flip side of the giving to others. And this is now, don't do anything to hurt the others. Then the next one is leave to God what's God's. What are those? So that's a prohibition to mate animals of different species, like making a mule. God wanted horses and donkeys, right? You want to make a mule? No, don't make a mule.
So Jews didn't use mules, or?
So we could use mules if a mule is made already. So we can use a mule, but we're not allowed to make a mule.
So all this animal experimentation are not allowed in Judaism? You know, when they make so many breeds of dogs, for example.
I don't know where the genus and species line is drawn. So like, can you make, if you have a dog, this dog and that dog, and you make another dog.
Yeah, I see.
Is that really? I don't know.
Yeah.
If the dogs can breed, we're.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Same species.
Yeah.
Mules are sterile.
Yeah.
Mules are sterile.
Sterile.
Right.
I don't know if that.
If you,
What do you mean?
if you.
Mules
interbreed-
cannot reproduce. Mules cannot reproduce. In order to get a mule, you need a horse and a donkey. One is the mother and one is the father. I think it can go either way, but I'm not sure.
No, I think it's
But a mule with another mule is sterile. You're not going to get it.
yeah, well, interbreeding species are frequently sterile. I know they can interbreed like a lion and a tiger, and the offspring is like sterile.
Sterile.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, Hashem.
Interesting. But with dogs, it's not that way, right?
No,
So-
dogs.
So they're
all
the same genus
the
and
same
species.
They're all the
They split them up from one thing by trying to isolate certain characteristics.
That's just selective breeding. That's-
Isn't that what they do? Yeah, that's what they do with dogs, right?
Yeah, but that's allowed.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
What about
That's what we're saying.
nectarines? Can you plant the nectarine? No, you have to cross.
Right.
No,
You can't cross
grafting-
species of those either, right? But you can eat a nectarine.
Yeah,
You can-
but they won't reproduce. You can't. There's no such.
Oh, you
thing as
can't plant a nectarine, yeah.
tree.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
I know.
Okay, so that's different species.
like seedless fruits. And
You're not allowed to graft
they
trees.
reproduce by like grafting.
Not allowed to graft trees.
That's how a seedless fruit
Wow.
Right.
reproduces.
Oh.
So it's against,
What?
are you allowed to eat it?
Yes,
by
Yeah.
you're allowed to eat it,
grafting-
but you're not allowed to
grafting
make
the
it.
fruit.
Not allowed to make it.
Can you plant it?
Pardon?
Can you buy it from a nursery and plant it?
I don't know. That I don't know.
If we
You know.
could buy it and plant it,
Buy and make.
we're not making it, but he doesn't.
You're prohibited to follow superstitions. We don't follow superstitions. Even though they maybe, there is a side that these things work. But we're not supposed to do that. If non-Jews do it, they want to do Ouija board or, horoscope or whatever. Okay, fine. But for us, that's not. We take God a day at a time, right? Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. So there's a prohibition of using auspicious times, right? Of saying, I get into the discussion with Scott on the phone. He's not on the phone, but basically you like to do things on Tuesdays because in the Chumash it says Ki Tov on the third day of the week twice. Doesn't say it on Monday at all, right? So on the first day it says Ki Tov. On the second day it doesn't say Ki Tov at all. On the third day it says Ki Tov twice. So that's Tuesday. That lines up to Tuesday. So some people like to do things, but that's auspicious times. You're trying to match it with time.
Mazel Dika day?
What?
Is that a Mazel Dika day?
Yeah.
Tell us again, how does that line up with our segulas when you say if you stand in front of the ark, you're gonna get this. You shouldn't do this.
I think segulas are very dangerous.
Like you shouldn't do a business deal. You shouldn't do a business deal during certain weeks of the year.
I think that's very
So it's
dangerous.
counted.
But he just said weeks of the year, but you said that like Tuesdays. How would not doing things certain weeks of the year be forbidden?
Well, that's because of different reasons. Like we're in a morning practice right now because we're going through the spheros. So we're not playing music or things like that.
Yeah.
But
he just mentioned weeks and you said you can't go by that unless you didn't hear him right.
I don't know what he said.
There's certain times we don't do business deals, right?
Right, during the 3 weeks. That's because it's a time that has been harmful for the Jewish people. So luckily we don't do things on that level for those things. We don't want to have court cases during those 3 weeks.
Which 3 weeks you done that?
Before Tisha B'Av.
I need to know that because I have many court dates. I need to know which dates I'm to avoid. 3 weeks before
It's
Tisha B'Av.
it's still a long time from now. August. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Fine. Okay, and then we don't destroy the edges of our beard. We don't put tattoos on. We don't do things that are unnatural, right? We leave to God what's God's, and we don't practice sorcery. And then these last ones are things where we're really putting our trust in Hashem. And that is the prohibition to defraud with weights and measures, right? Because you could have easily false weights and measures, and that is and what you're doing is you're denying that Hashem is in control of the parnasa that you're going to get. And you're saying, I know better, because I know if I have this particular weight, I can make money. And so that's really a high level of trusting in Hashem. And then the last ones, again, are, like I said, they're the bookends, the prohibition to curse one's father and mother, the obligation to execute by sreifa somebody who's liable when that's called for, and the prohibition to adopt the customs of non-Jews. Okay.
Old ties, not.
Reb Tzvi. Reb Tzvi.
Yes, sir. Rafulda, 1 second. Yeah, sure. Speak
Why
up, please.
Why do we have the Gilead rise in Acharei and again in Kedoshim?
So in Kedoshim, at the end of Kedoshim, those are the onshim, those are the penalties. In Acharei, those are the prohibitions. You can't punish without having both a prohibition and also having an punishment laid out. So you have to have both. So that's why we have it at the end of Acharei and the end of Kedoshim.
Okay,
The end of
thank you.
Kedoshim is the punishments. It says what happens.
No, there's no enumerated punishment for eating unkosher food.
It's just a lav. It's just a prohibition for eating unkosher food. Now, there are things, on a spiritual level, the Rabbi Meyer has said this many, many times, and he said it just a week or so ago. He said that there's nothing worse for your spiritual arteries than non-kosher food. When it clog your spiritual arteries, have a lobster.
Physical arteries.